Welcome everyone. While I expect many more people to join since we have 45 participants signed up tonight, I will get us started since it's 8:02. My name is Andrea Baccarelli. I'm one of the coordinators of the Ergon Professional Hub, which is a community of professionals that work together to help each other with their career and their skill development. And this is about several areas of our jobs, including tackling the challenges and harnessing the opportunities we live in our own job, but also thinking about finding a new job when time comes. And Ergon is completely supported by volunteers, and all that we do is free of charge. And we help people in two ways. One with the webinars and events that you have joined today, and another by matching junior persons with senior people, or even senior people with senior people, with peers, to help each other having conversations and also helping each other to find a new job when in need. So tonight is our first event of the series for fall 2021, and we have the opportunity to have with us two amazing presenters. And as you know, the topic that we discussed tonight is really interesting: how to work in a remote culture. And we have two different experiences. The first presenter is Dr. Jia Zhang, who is an epidemiologist who specializes in clinical health, economics, and outcomes research, clinical trials, and large epidemiology studies. She's currently at Analysis Group, a consulting company with international presence, and she's based in Boston. And she was before a research scientist at Columbia University, and she got her doctorate at the Harvard School of Public Health. And she has been working on different type of studies, but for tonight's matter, I would say that for tonight's topic, I would say that she comes from a company that has traditionally been very strong in working remotely. So even before this new world in which we live now started. At the opposite, Amidar, who is the founder and executive director of idealist.org, which is a non-profit organization based in New York City, will tell you about different experience, a company with a strong culture of a workplace that in the past year and a half, transitioned completely online. So he will be able to tell us about the shift and how now they're organizing themselves moving forward. Idealist serves more than 120,000 organizations around the world and has more than 1.5 million visitors every month between the English and Spanish website. And it is rooted in Amy's vision of a world progressing towards positive social change. They accompany people making connection online and in person, bridging devices to collaborate for a better tomorrow. I would like to tell you that we will ask first Gia to speak and then Amy. So they will go through with their remarks. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. They will speak for about 10 to 20 minutes each. And then we will open it up for a Q&A that we have the opportunity to be informal tonight. So thank you very much. And Gia, thank you for being with us, and take it away.
Thank you, Andrea. It has been an honor to join this seminar, and I really found it, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to connect with you guys, to get to know you, and to share some of my personal experiences. So I am working in a consulting firm, which is specialized in economic consulting. And the practice area that I am particularly focusing on is healthcare related research, which includes health economic studies. That's basically telling you whether the drug is priced well and whether it is cost effective, whether it's worthy for the government to pay for it. And another part of my work is on outcomes research. So that's really using a clinical perspective and also data-oriented approach to understand whether or not the drug is proved to be better than the comparators. So I am a manager at my company. In the same time, I'm also serving as the director of China position in which who like actually work very closely with our China company, with our China branch to develop some of the local activities. So with that being said, I'm very closely engaged in multi-time zone work. So in the past, before the pandemic, also throughout the pandemic, and I'm imagining maybe a long time even after the pandemic, I probably will have very funny schedules for my work because I need to accommodate, the reviewer in the Europe and also my client in China and, my team in the US. So yeah, so given the nature of my job, it actually involves very deep engagement with multiple stakeholders. So a part of it is our client, who typically are the pharma company who funds the research and who actually have particular research objectives to be addressed. And another part is regulatory agency, for example, FDA, and and also the relevant counterparts in Europe and also China FDA as well. So those are the people who reviews the evidence and then tell you whether or not additional evidence is needed or whether the drug is ready to go. And in the same time, I'm working in a very team-based company. So in our company that we have maybe each study is assembled in a project team. And in the team, as a project leader, that I will be working with different people from different backgrounds. And it's typically a size of 10 people on the same project. And just taking my current status as an example, I'm leading maybe 20 or 25 projects at the same time. So that would give me maybe a wide range of people I need to interact day to day. So I need to, for example, provide my insights as needed, oversee the progress of the project. So it's very much people-oriented job, and I'm typically very used to get surrounded by people. The pandemic definitely makes it a lot harder without being able to see each other on a day-to-day basis. And however, there are some like tips and experiences that I feel very helpful, and also that's also empowered by our company support. So I would love to sort of share some of those with you as I go further into this. So so basically, in my work, the day-to-day interactions, accommodating different time zones, as well as accommodating the teams and the clients, multiple stakeholders' needs, all at one time becomes a daily norm. So I'm going to share my screen, which will lead us to sort of a little bit more detailed. Can you see? Does it work? Great, I'll take that as a yes. Yeah, so basically I'm just putting some of my personal preferences and personal tips on the screen just for your references. And I know like every job is different, and also my personal recipe probably would not work for all. So just hope some of the aspects you might find them helpful, and feel free to raise questions after this, and then we can maybe talk into more of the details. So first I found helpful is to develop your game plan, and it has to be yours, not whatever is subscribed from your company or what you're told to be working by the others. So you have to orient your game plan around your personal schedule and how it would work best for your working style. For example, in my day-to-day work environment, I use a punch list a lot so that I can know what projects are on the top priority and what are the ones in the relatively less priority list, and I need to follow up in with a sort of a lower frequency. And I do try my best to keep my schedule consistent day to day, because that will give people who work with me a sort of a expectation when I can be found and where. So as a project leader and also sort of the primary contact from my clients, I do try to make my schedule pretty transparent so they wouldn't know at what time, like it probably would be best to just throw a call or maybe just to send a couple of emails and I will get rapid responses. So by setting the schedule, I'm also reserving a big chunk of time for myself. For example, for those more sort of like thinking require or those tasks that requires a little bit more sort of a quiet environment to complete, for example, writing a report or criticizing some of the other work products. I think that's just the reserve the time would be ideal for. And in the same time, by setting up your game plan, you're also giving the expectations and making it very clear to the others that you're working with. For example, I have 2 kids and I need to drop them off and pick them up. And during the day, because I'm taking a lot of calls during my nighttime with the other time zones. So during my day, I also need to reserve 1 or 2 hours for myself to run exercises and also to do my dance class. So yeah, just to make it very transparent and very consistent can help you to set up a routine, and that routine will go a long way because it's the best recipe for you, and of course will remain flexible to adjust it as needed. But I found it very powerful. And the second thing is to sustain efficiency while welcoming flexibility. So I found it very important to give a pilot period for whatever model you're testing. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I was in China for a business trip. And because then that means like I probably need to flip my work hour, work a lot from during my evening and last during the day or last in the morning. So I have started doing that, which means there might be a delay when the US team come to me and say, hey, I need your suggestions on A and B, and I might not be able to get to it until, 13 hours later. So just to make it clear with the team and also seek for their feedbacks and guidances as needed, and take those suggestions and digest them and slowly develop a model that probably will work the best, not only just for you, but also for people who are working around you. So, and also during my time in China, because I'm sort of I was one of the most senior staff in our China office. So we are sort of fostering a culture which strongly encourage taking ownership of your product. So what that does that mean is to by putting a lot of thoughts up front and to reduce and to avoid future multiple rounds of iterations and revisions as needed. So I also find this part of mindset does also change a lot. So after we sort of made an emphasizes and also encourage everyone to run the checklist before they submit something to the senior consultant, we found such practice really saved a lot of the case time. So, and the third tip I wanted to share is to reserve a dedicated space just for yourself. It can be the basement, it can be your gym or your workout room. It can be anywhere, but you just need to find this place where you can focus, stay professional, and run away from all those noises and disturbance. And having such space also give you a mental readiness whenever every morning when you walk in here and try to be prepared for your meeting. It's just a lot easier for you to enter that mode, and it also helps you to separate your life from work a little better. So for me, I work in my reading room, and I think it's a very small room, but it's just enough for me to focus and to shut all the voices out and do all the jobs that I needed to complete. So having this space and also be generous in sort of setting it up. I invested on my dual screeners, and also I had a very good chair, so that can keep me going for 4 to 5 hours during the day, and I think that's helpful as well, and make the work from home model sort of more comparable as what you would typically face in the office. And yeah, so and with that, so a couple more tips. So capitalizing on the time is I found just as related to what I shared before, to leave the chunk of time where you can focus on your task that requires focused thinking. For example, doing report. I found this particularly useful. So I used to read my book on my MBTA train to work, but with the pandemic, I can no longer do that. So actually, I also set up the 30 minutes in the morning where I shut my cell phone, shut my emails, and don't read anything else, but just this couple of reports I picked for my reading task today. And I found that extremely efficient. and it can also helps to cleanse your mind. And I also heard that some of my coworkers, they're using the time just to meditate and get prepared for the day, which I think is a fantastic idea, which I will also try. And also everyone is encouraged to be creative throughout this like changing dynamic, because we don't know how long COVID is going to last and how it is going to shape our workplace going forward. So just be creative with the current situation, and be always ready to modify as needed. For example, right now I'm doing a lot of playground meetups with my teammates, and also even with my clients, where we would just hang out in the outdoor and talk a little bit about the project and making connections in a safer setting compared to just go to the office. Well, and also I found it's very, very interesting thing is after pandemic, I sort of get to be connected with my coworkers and also even my clients in a more personal way, because during this time we will realize we're facing the same challenge and we're sharing the same concerns, and we're not alone in this situation. So we're partners, actually. We're really holding hands and work with each other to make the best out of the not so optimal situation. So through the pandemic, there are definitely a lot of disappointments and a lot of things that we could have done but didn't get a chance to. But I also found it very inspiring how it actually reshaped my relationship with my colleagues and my clients, and how the trust relationships can continue to grow under this stressful time. So I'm very grateful for that. And the last but not least, stay well. That's the most important thing, because in my work dynamic, I'm facing my teammates, my mentees, my senior consultants, my partner, and also my client, my regulatory reviewers. But in the center of the dynamic, there is you. So yourself is the most important part in this dynamic, and that's the essential. Actually, only if you're doing well, the rest of the dynamic will go well, and you will be able to serve others better and to help others better. So just reserve time to disconnect from work. And I actually found this is the most challenging part for me. So just develop the habit that where you will dedicate time just for your hobbies and with your family and friends, and make sure that you enjoy maybe a silly book and maybe just outdoor work. So I think all those little things will go a long way to help optimize your energy and your mindset and also your health. So yeah, so I think that's the most important takeaway with the COVID pandemic going on. I feel just stay strong as a person, and then you can sort of do all the best you could to help others at work. So with that, I will stop and pass the podium to Amy, and see if there's any questions. Feel free to share towards the end of the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gia. This was a fantastic overview, and I'll just pass the ball to Amy directly, and maybe you can share your screen. Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So my name is Ami. Before we started this meeting, Andrea and I were sort of laughing with the fact that we live in the US. We're both not from here, and we both have women's names, Andrea and Amy. And then we have to go through life with people thinking we're women until they meet us. But so it goes. So I run a nonprofit organization called idealist.org. We've been around for almost 25 years now, and we're known primarily as the biggest job career site in the nonprofit world. At any given point, there are about 8,000 or 9,000 jobs on the site. And I know that Ergon has a lot to do with careers and jobs. As if anyone is looking for a job in the nonprofit world, in any nonprofit NGO anywhere in the world, idealist.org is a good place to go. And I won't say much more about the web, because you can check it out on your own. but I'm in our office now, which I wanted to actually be here almost symbolically because this was about the whole idea of going remote. I got up a second ago because if I don't move for 15 minutes, all the lights go off because I'm alone here. So we have a staff of about 30. And until the pandemic hit, until March of last year, most of us were here. There was one person in Spain and one in Canada, but essentially we're all here. And we had a very, very strong office culture, which I'll talk about more in a second. And then suddenly COVID happened and we all went home for a few weeks. And here we are 19 months later. And many of us have never seen each other again for 19 months in person. It's a very long time when you're used to working with people every day. And so I want to talk a little bit just about the pros and cons that we have discovered, that I think many of us on this call have discovered of working at home, both for or remotely, for the person and then also for the organization. So as I said, we had a strong organizational culture. We had a very strong office culture. It's hard to see, but we have this very, very beautiful office that we built for us 3 years ago. We have a dining table in the kitchen that is long enough for all 30 of us to have lunch together. That was very important for us. And so it's that kind of place where people have lunch together, where we give the staff lunch very often. And so people know each other. In many cases, 6 or 7 of the people have been working here for more than 10 years. They're very strong interpersonal friendships. And so that culture was very important to us. And also, again, we'll hear more later maybe where you have worked, but 30 is exactly the right size for everyone to still know everyone. You don't have different floors or different departments. Everyone gets to talk to everyone at lunch, right? Regardless of what work you do. And that was really, really important, that on any given point, somebody went on vacation, she came back and she could tell everyone how her vacation went, right? Regardless of her department or her group. So that was the kind of culture we have, lots of laughter, lots of friendship. Yeah. So then COVID hits and we all go home and start working from home. Fortunately, we were ready for that. I don't know how people did this. We're not ready for this. We're ready technologically in that already many years ago, we are entirely in the cloud and we all have laptops. We stopped buying, big personal computers 15 years ago. And so whenever there was a snow day in New York, it didn't matter. We could work from anywhere. So in that sense, it was very easy. We just stayed home next day as if it was a snow day. And we just kept going for a year and a half as if it was a snow day. So here we are a year and a half later. And let's see, what have we discovered and what do we think we're going to do going forward? So I think for many of us, for many people, the pros, the advantages of working at home or remotely, but I think it's been mostly at home so far, which is another story, right? We're not working in coffee shops or in parks. We've been working at home, most of us, alone, not with friends in a coffee shop, which will hopefully happen more in the future again. Is that so? Some fairly obvious advantages, right? One, people don't have to commute. We have about 7 or 8 people who have to commute for more than an hour every day from Westchester or Connecticut. And for them not to commute is, of course, a huge advantage. They have discovered that they have 2 hours back in their life every day, which is wonderful to have. Those who do, very concentrated work, we have programmers, designers, being able to work without interruption, without noise. Some of them, sort of love that and found themselves being more productive. Obviously, you can do things at home. You can cook, you can change a diaper, you can, etc. And I think there's a deeper thing there. There's a certain kind of person in big cities like New York that didn't see their kids for breakfast because they had to leave the house before the kids go up. They certainly didn't have lunch with them because they were at work. And in some cases, didn't have dinner with them because they came back from work after the kids went to bed. That person can now be having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with their children every day if they want to. Maybe it's too much for some people, but if you want to, there are people that have switched now their lives in that, mom and dad or mom and mom or whoever are having lunch with the kids every day. I mean, this is sort of an amazing thing. And over a year and a half, your habits change and that becomes like a deep part of your life, right? So those are big advantages, again, the of working from home. And then, I think there are more subtle ones. I have someone who told me, part of working in an office, we all know that no one works 40 hours constantly. Most people work some of the time. And some of the time you're pretending that you're working, and you hope that your boss doesn't realize you're pretending. And you can be pretending, truly pretending, right? You're looking for an apartment while your boss thinks you're working, or you're pretending in the sense that you're talking, you're gossiping. And so this person said, I'd rather be at home and work 20 hours and do other things and not have to pretend I'm working. I still do my work. I do everything I'm supposed to do, but it's much more honest. I'm not hiding that I'm not working when I'm not working. So those, I think, are all the advantages. The disadvantages that we've seen for individuals, right? One, obviously, isolation, loneliness. I mean, people that live truly alone and that have had to be alone for a year at home, that is hard. That's one thing. Second, the whole lack of boundaries between work and personal life. When does the day actually end when you're home all the time? Right, so those things can be complicated at a personal level, and then the lack of community, the lack of interaction. I was telling Gia earlier that some of that, it's hard to distinguish now in our minds between what is remote work and what is COVID. So remote work, we're not in the office. Because of COVID, we're alone, right? So if you could be working remotely without COVID, hopefully it goes away soon. And you could be working with friends in the park. You could be in a coffee shop. The isolation piece of this is not the remote work. The isolation is COVID. So that'll be, I think, easier to judge when that is done. For the organization, for companies, businesses, advantages and disadvantages. One advantage that we have seen is, well, the productivity of some people and the fact that many of the staff seem happy in some cases to be with their family, to not commute. I like our staff to be happy. It makes me happy when they're happy. So that's just one good thing. Second, obviously, if you want to commit to going into the future being remote, you can hire anywhere, which is amazing, right? Before this, we were so into the fact that we had this very strong office that we hired in New York, and that's 8 million people. Now we're free to hire among 300 million people because we don't really care anymore where they are, because who cares? So you suddenly have many, many more people that you could hire. And then, we are certainly not there yet. We have a contract for 7 more years with this office, it is what it is. For those who are willing to say, you know what, we're not going to have an office at all. Well, you save a lot of money not having an office. And I saw this beautiful article this week about how all that money that you save, you could choose to invest in really interesting staff retreats and staff meetings, right? So rents in New York are very expensive. The average company is spending $10,000, $20,000 a year per employee on rent, etc. That's a lot of money for going to a nice hotel in Costa Rica, or wherever. We can have, we can all meet in Tanzania and go see the elephants and then also work after that. So if you are willing to close your office and spend all that money on interesting meetings, one-on-ones, teams, the whole organization, that's a pretty nice budget for having really interesting meetings that everyone, I think, would want to attend. So those are the advantages, I think, at a company level, business level. The disadvantages, I think, are, again, to some degree or more, fairly obvious. One is the whole issue of serendipitous innovation. So all these conversations that happen in a business or in an organization that are not planned, right? That just happen because you're in a kitchen, or right at 5 o'clock, some people leave, some people stay, and they have a really interesting conversation. Those things are lost. It's very difficult to set up a Zoom meeting with someone just to chat. You don't really do that. And about a month ago, we opened the office, and 4 or 5 people have started coming back. Not coincidentally, those who live nearby, those who live in Manhattan, Brooklyn, they're coming back. Younger ones also, and you can already see just with 4 or 5 people, we can see how we're having conversations during the day that would never happen during Zoom. They just wouldn't. And some of them are just pleasant interpersonal community building conversations, even between 2 people. And some really have to do with work. And so, of course, there are advantages to being right there and solving a problem without having a meeting. And then I alluded earlier that one of the things that we loved earlier when we were all here was that everyone got to talk to everyone. And there are very big advantages to that, even for an organization, not just for the people. And for the last year and a half, that is gone. people who basically are not part of one team within the 30 people never talk just a conversation, just how are you doing with someone from a different team, because it's weird to set up a meeting for that. So that has been lost. So this issue of just ideas popping up, innovating, interesting conversation, that is gone. And then lastly on that, I think that's sort of my biggest worry for the whole, I guess, country or world or our organization. I think that the people that are suffering the most from this are young people. The younger, the more they're suffering. So if you are, if you take these two extremes, if you think of someone who is established in her career, she or he are not really climbing anymore. They are what they are. They do what they do. They're good at what they do, right? Take someone like Andrea. Like, he's established in his career. He is who he is. And, and then maybe you also have a family and you want to spend time with that family. And maybe you've moved out of New York, so you have a long commute. So for you, this whole remote thing, and you have maybe a bigger house because you are already at an age that you can afford a bigger house where you can have a room to work in and you can close the door. So all those things together make it so that this remote thing can be pretty amazing. If you're a young person and you reverse all of that, you're just trying to move your career forward, you're just learning, you have a small apartment, maybe you're sharing, you don't have really a good place to work at home, then of course it's much more complicated. And if you go to the youngest level, right, if you think about someone who just finished college and is about to get their first job, right, that whole experience that some of us remember of coming to a first workplace and learning the most basic things, right? How do adults who are not your parents talk to each other? Like, what is that about? How do people handle disagreement? How do people communicate? What is a meeting? How can I be helpful? If you read, any basic career book advice, they'll always say two things, right? Don't cause problems, don't be the problem, and be helpful wherever you can. And so if you take that to heart, you come to an office and like, oh my God, there's no more paper in the printer. I'll change the paper. Or someone needs help with something, I will offer to help. On Zoom, how do you know who needs help? How do you learn? How do you create any kind of apprentice culture on Zoom? Very, very hard. And so I'm very worried that there's a whole generation now that will simply not get hired because it's just too much trouble. It's too much trouble to take someone now at 22 and begin to teach them the basics of what work is. People are going to have a bias towards hiring someone who already has worked somewhere and understands, what an assignment is and what et cetera. So that's worrisome. So we'll see. For now, personally, at an organization level, we understand we're never going back to what was. The sort of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday is dead. For now, we're essentially staying fully remote. We have told people they can go live wherever they want in the country. 5 have done it. They're not coming back to the office. And we'll see what happens. It's going to be tough. We have made it work so far. The staff, most people who wanted to continue remotely, they're like, it's working, it's not a problem. And I've told them several times, it's working because we have built this on the trust and the friendship that we had before. We have cheated because for 1.5 years now, we haven't hired anyone new. And so we're all basing this on prior relationships. How you build an entirely new relationship with something new, I'm sure it's done. People do it. We haven't done it. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to hire someone and then see them once in a while on Zoom and then build the whole relationship on that. I don't really know how that's done. We'll have to learn as we go. And then to just close this whole thing, I'm looking forward to the COVID piece of this moving away, because it's one thing to work remotely. It's a very different thing never to see each other. So in other words, if we could at least all of us meet every couple of months, and we're happy to fly people in, if different teams could meet together once in a while in a coffee shop or in a hotel or somewhere, that changes everything. Not being in an organization and not seeing each other for 2 years is just weird. I mean, that's not normal human behavior ever. So we're looking forward to being able to meet again and move forward. So we'll see. It's an interesting world. I think many things are changing dramatically. Once you free yourself up from this, why 9 to 5? Why not work at the hours that are best for every person, every team? Some people are morning people, some are night people. Let them work when they're most effective. it all becomes, more interesting, more fluid. We'll see where it goes. So anyway, that's a little bit about our experience. I'm happy to, hear your experience and take sort of any questions or comments or ideas. But I want to leave that to Andrea, and I will mute my microphone.
Thank you so much. That was really very interesting. And I had to say I have 200 questions, so I better leave it to the other people in the room to start asking questions. I see that Laura Kelly has a question.
Yeah, I'll just repeat it real quick here, Gia, but basically just wondering how you actually protect the work time that you've dedicated to getting stuff done, because I'm very good at protecting time at work that is for life stuff, and people respect that we all have stuff to do outside of work. But then it's like, oh, well, I was going to work on this big thoughtful project, but now the client requested a call, so I'm going to join that instead. And then guess what, like the rest of my day is full and I can't get that work done today. So I'm just curious, like how you balance that and set expectations with all those groups you work with.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I that's a tricky one, because at work you are the one who are actually, your responsibility is to serve the people around you. That could be your client and your teammate. So I think the first action I took was to make my expectation, and also the way I think I would work the best, very transparent with my team. So, in maybe Outlook or some other devices or some other platform, you can share your schedule. I would just block a chunk, not too crazy, not an hour or whatever, but maybe 30 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon for yourself. And if needed, you can go as much as you think is reasonable, and communicate with them beforehand and make it very clear. And to your question on the client's request, that's actually a very typical situation in my work. So, because we are working with those pharma company who wanted to get their drug approved as quickly as possible, and they're very eager to know what's the result. But one thing I learned from my work is that you shouldn't be always on the lookout for urgent requests, because that would be totally interrupting and make things going to actually in a very inefficient way. So when we decide to have a milestone, or when we set up the timeline, put a lot of thoughts up front and make the plan and stick to the plan. And of course, we'll be able to accommodate as things change, as the situation evolves. We will definitely make modifications, but not always it has to be last minute. And that actually can also come back and give the feedback to the client to understand what's the best way to use your time and to work with you. Because at the end of the day, you're the partners. So the outcome we're fighting together for is to get a research and make the high quality data for your objectives. So either party is being, ineffective or inefficient would only make the job harder. So just be very transparent, honest, and also upfront with them as much as possible. And when it comes to your hour, shut all the sources. The distraction might come in. I didn't check my email. I turned off the notification on my cell phone and even on my computer, so I could just look at my second screen and work on that report. Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Please, Linda.
So I am a huge proponent of work from home. I've been doing it for about 13 years, not exclusively, but I've always sort of worked from home. And I've noticed that one of the biggest challenges is bringing leadership along. There is this misconception sometimes when someone is at home that they may not be working. If you're in the office and you take a 2-hour lunch, people are like, oh, I saw the person today. Yes, they're working. But if you're home and you don't respond to an email immediately, people think, oh, you're not working. Also, employees make the argument, well, if I'm home, I'm increasing productivity versus spending time in commuting. So how do you balance those two when you're trying to propose or really advocate for work from home, but you also need that space and work-life balance?
I'd leave it to Amy and Gia to decide who takes the question.
Yeah, I'm happy to go. We can take turns if you want. I mean, those are exactly the kind of things, Linda, that we had to basically deal with this year. I think that you know, and probably this is different from every organization, every company, every person. We and every I guess job, right? Every kind of position. So, for example, we have a support team of 4 people who all they do is take phone calls, emails, etc., and they work as a team. And even before the pandemic, they were used to being there at certain hours, and they're constantly in touch with each other by Slack and by email. Even when they were sitting next to each other, they would Slack and email each other and not talk, which always was really interesting. So they just took that home. Now they have sort of a mutual commitment to fundamentally be there from sort of 9 to sort of 5 East Coast time, so they can count on each other in that way. Their work also their work creates itself. When they come in the morning, there are cases to respond to, emails to respond to, phone calls to take, etc. And the team is sort of exactly big enough to be able to deal that with all that without sort of being overwhelmed, right? So that's one kind of person. A different kind of person is someone who's supposed to be writing, for example, blog posts or articles. And there you get into a really interesting thing, which is that as a manager of that person, somebody has to decide what is reasonable output. I mean, what if your job is to write articles, what is a reasonable expectation? Is the expectation, you know, 1 article a day, 1 article a week? How do you judge if the person is being productive or not? And that, I think, varies dramatically by industry, by company, by place, right? What is productivity even mean? For someone's job is to think more and strategize, you know, what is a product? So I think you get into these issues that are very specific, almost like you mentioned, where we have people in California, we have people in New York, and we have someone in Spain, right? So there's a 9-hour difference between Spain and California. How do you meet when you want to be able to meet so that it's not too early here and it's not too late there? It's not fair to make her work after dinner. So when do you meet? How do you commit to hours that sort of work for everyone? And then how do you make sure that some people, and it's been a problem, I know for a fact that among the 30 people that work with us, some people right now are overworked, and it's hard to see that. What you were saying earlier, Linda, there's almost like a reverse side to it, which was when we were in the office. It was easier to see if someone is overworked. It's easier to see that everyone leaves and someone stays till 7 because they have too much work, and you could see it, right? You could see that people would go to the office and have lunch and stay there for half an hour, and somebody would take a plate and come back to their desk because there's too much to do. And you could see that, and you could worry about that person if that's the kind of manager you are. Whereas now all of that is hidden from you. So someone overworked is hidden, and someone who doesn't have enough work, and then what do? Do they tell their manager, give me more? Or they're like, I'm home, nobody knows I don't have enough work, so, you know, whatever. If they think this is enough, well, then that's enough for them, right? And then lastly, you have the other case, which is interesting, right? So we have a person here who's been doing our finance accounting now for almost 10 years. And she's great, she's fantastic. But before the pandemic, she has kids at home. She has a kid at home in Westchester. So she was very religious about her hours. She was here from 8 to 4 every day. At 4, she would run to Grand Central and go home. But at 8, she was here to, you know, have her 8 hours. So she was sitting beside her COO every day. And the convention that we all lived in, right, was that you're in the office. You're in the office 8 to 4, 5 days a week. And so if at some point she had less work, she couldn't just say, hey, I'm done for the day at 1, see you tomorrow. That's not the social convention that we all lived in. The convention we lived in is that you stay till 4. So she could work more slowly without thinking. She, you know, the work filled the day, as they say. Now at home, she has every incentive to work as efficiently and as rapidly as possible. The sooner she's done, the sooner she can go with her son and have a picnic in the park, right? So the same work is getting done, but she is being much more efficient. And we as managers had to take this philosophical decision. Do we care? Do I care that the work is being done and that's it? Or do I care how many hours she works? And if she's not working her full 40 hours, something is wrong. And where we're landing, I think, is that I don't care. As long as the work is getting done well, I don't care in how many hours she does it. And so she can do whatever she likes. So long answer to your question, I think it varies by person, it varies, but I'll close with one last thing. Trust becomes truly critical. That we've seen. Before the pandemic, trust was important, of course, but you could see if someone is working, if someone's not working, you could see if someone is not feeling well, you could see if someone is depressed just by the way their shoulders look, and you could show concern. Now, trust is everything. If you don't trust what people tell you when you ask if they're okay, you can't see them. So if you don't trust they're doing their jobs, so trust becomes truly everything.
I mean, I think part of the question was also how do you convince the leadership as the higher ups, and perhaps, I mean, in your case, I understand you're the CEO and founder of the company. Perhaps what convinced you that this could work, and what convinced you that this is going to work in the future? And perhaps I can also ask you to tell us about the conversation we had about how hard it has been to hire people if you don't offer this type of flexible options.
Well, I'll give a shorter answer now, I promise. And your two questions are related. I think that, first of all, at first there was no option, right? This whole thing was imposed, and it's still being imposed to some degree in some offices, right? Like remote work. And so it really came to a decision for us 6 or 8 months ago, when some people started asking to move permanently to another state. And we said, well, what do we do? If we say no, they will be disappointed. If we say yes to one, we then have to say yes to everyone. We can't discriminate. So by saying yes to 1 or 2 or 3, we're essentially signaling you can go live wherever you want. And there's some very big incentives, right? New York is a very expensive place. New York has some very high taxes. It could be very nice to go live in Montana and pay no state or city taxes anymore and live in a far cheaper place where you can buy a house for the price of a bathroom, right? So this can get very, very tempting very quickly. So we said yes, because we didn't want to lose 2 really great people. And I think you fall into this place, Andrea, where basically I think some organizations that say no completely and try to basically make people come from 9 to 5, they're going to lose people to organizations that are more flexible. And I think many employees now have a lot of power in terms of saying, you know what, we don't really want to do that. And so, Andrea, you gave the example of trying to hire someone now, and you're getting far fewer applications than we used to get for a job that requires someone to be there, because people don't want to do that anymore. The commute, by the way, in a place like New York, the commute is a huge thing. People do not want to spend 2 hours of their life anymore on the train, especially when they realize deeply that time was on them, not on the company, right? It'd be very different if we told people, you know, you can leave home at 9 and be home at 5. You will work 10 to 4, and we will pay you for that commute. That's not what people do. The commute is on them, not on the company. And so they're like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be close to home, and I'm willing to make less, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't want that life anymore. And I think you have to listen to that.
Thank you. Before asking for more questions, I would like to point out that in the chat you have a form that we would love you to fill out so that we can get your feedback on tonight's event, and you probably received it already in your email as well. Any other follow-up or questions? And Gia, feel free to Carol Polzer.
Yes, thank you. So this is wonderful, but I am thinking, I'm a counselor, so I'm thinking about helping other people. So there's 2 people in mind. Okay, one is a young dad, and I was wondering if either of you helped your employees or your teammates have a meeting with their family when they started working remotely. What I mean is, so now this young dad has had to tell his family, I cannot be disturbed when I'm here. I'm actually working. They were not used to seeing him work at home because he would leave. So now he has to work at home. In addition to having the one child that was used to seeing leave, he has 2 twins now. So he has 3 young children. And they are being taken care of by other people, but it's hard, it's very hard. So he finally had to say, when this door is closed, I'm working, for them to get the idea. But it was interesting in a way to have a family meeting, or at least if they're older children, or with the wife or with the husband, whatever situation might be, to really prepare a family, because now you're home all the time. Okay, so that's person A. And then person B, that's a client in our counseling work, came to us because they are constantly multitasking and they're not getting their job done. When they were in the office, the doorbell wasn't ringing, other things weren't distracting them, and they were very efficient. And they feel that they're not efficient at all, and they're very distracted. And so we're supposed to have a seminar on helping people not multitask. That one of the head counselors that I'm working with now said, multitasking is not good. And so we need to help people not multitask when people have been multitasking, probably all their lives. But anyway, so I was just thinking of these two they're young. These people are probably both of them 40. One is in the 30s, one is 40. And these struggles are coming up that they never had before when they were working in offices. So I just wanted to bring it to the table and see what comments you have. Thank you.
Maybe I can comment on the first case. Yeah, because as a mother of 2 kids, I definitely echo what you are seeing and what your client's concern. So my suggestion is to make creative deals with the other parent. Yeah, for example, like my daughter is 6, my son is 11. So when I'm working in hours when they're home, it's very difficult for them to not knock on the door, right? They wanted to spend time with you, which I take as a compliment. So I made a deal with my husband that he will take the kids to the park and I will cook for dinner. So that's the deal we had for about 18 months now, which works great for me, because that's actually also something maybe related to multitasking. So what I found very actually refreshing and helpful is I will cook my meal while I speak to my team. Because during at my dinner time is typically the recap conferences I have with my team to summarize, what do we have done for today? What is going on with the case, and what we're going to tackle tomorrow? It's a relatively informal conversation, and it just works great when I'm mixing flours together and waiting for the bread to become bigger, and I can chat with my team, and I will also do video conferencing with them so they can see what I'm doing, and we're just having a good time together to put the work day to into an end, and being refreshed, and also can't wait for tomorrow to start. And so I would suggest that just to discuss communication is the number one thing at your work and also in your family as well, just to make your expectation and what you can do, what you cannot do very clear with your partner. And just set up the routines and make the kids understand, this is not the hour of no money. It's the hour with your dad. It's special time for you to enjoy something maybe mommy would not allow, for example, eating snacks before dinner. Just put some fun regimens into it, and I'm sure they will do a magic spin.
Thank you.
Just to maybe add 1 or 2 small things to that. One is that, we can only talk from our experience, right? So in our case, I think for a whole bunch of personal reasons, the vast majority of our staff of 28, 30 people welcomed the ability to work at home, at least for a while. They had either they had no kids, or they had bigger, I don't know, most of them. And then we also, by the way, supported them. So we bought desks for people, we bought chairs for people, we sent them, we gave everyone a budget to try to make their work space as best as they could. And so we didn't have, we don't have people, or I think we have 1 person, but the kind of a family where you have 2 people with 2 or 3 kids that are, between 8 and 12 in a small apartment. So I think that we were overlooking is all those families for whom the obligation to work at home when COVID started was actually a nightmare. And that we sort of didn't have. We were fortunate among our staff that for most of our staff, that was not the case. The idea of 5 people all need the Wi-Fi, there's no space, everyone is yelling, it's hot, it's cold, you can't go out. I mean, truly a nightmare. And so for those people, I think, going back to the office as soon as possible, or going to a coffee shop, or going outside is really important. Having the kids go back to school. I mean, this whole thing, I can see how that has been a nightmare. I'll close with one last thing, which I think was sort of a blessing in our case. One, you know, as I think you saw earlier, some of you, we had a baby. My wife, who's here with that hand on her cheek, that's my wife, Rosario. We had a baby 10 days before the closing for COVID. And so for the first year and a half of this baby's life, I spent my whole day at home with the baby, which was an amazing blessing. I mean, without COVID, I would have gone back to the office like a normal, you know, guy after 2 weeks, and I would have seen her in the evenings, maybe sometimes, and that's it. I got to spend a year and a half with her until a month ago, which was amazing. The second thing I think that is more subtle and more general is that until recently, we lived in a very small apartment, and I was working for the first year of COVID in the kitchen table, and my wife was there, you know, around me, also doing her things or her studies and the baby. And so for many hours a day, I was having these kind of meetings. And so my wife, for, you know, several months, was listening to me work for hours during the day. And that showed her a side of me that she didn't know. You know, many of us have multiple sides, right? We're like diamonds. And so you meet someone and you know they're the side they show you at home, but you don't really know their work side. You don't really know how they behave at work. And so in that sense, I think COVID for some people was a blessing too, in that they discovered more of their partner. They discovered another side of their partner. Hopefully they like that side they discovered, but they saw who that person is when they're not there. Who are their colleagues? You know, who are these people that you keep talking to me about? And now when I walk behind you, I see them on the screen, I hear them. And it's like, oh, that's that Laura Kelly person you kept mentioning to me. Oh, I get it now, right? So she actually has a face. And so I think that also, I tend to also have a personality where I look for blessings, I look for the good things. So I think this actually was wonderful. So I think it's very varied, obviously. It's important not to forget that the lower down you go on the economic scale, the more of a nightmare this was, right? People who got to spend a year and a half on their vacation home, those who have one, with their family, I mean, that's pretty wonderful. Those who were stuck at home in a one-room apartment with 6 people, less wonderful. So I think the COVID thing was pretty nice for rich people and a complete disaster for poor people. And I think we have to sort of remember that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are approaching the top of the hour, but perhaps if there is, I'm asking also our presenters for their availability, but if there is any one last question or comment, we might have time for that. Because I had one actually, and one of the things that terrifies me of working remotely is having difficult conversations. I mean, if things go well, everyone is happy, but if someone starts to drift away and lose their work ethics, I mean, how do you have those type of conversations, and how make that possible? Considering that I don't have Gia's grace and smile, so that's also make it harder for me.
No, I think Andrea, I definitely echo. I had also sort of experienced one scenario which we had to let one employee go because of the performance issue during the COVID pandemic, and we couldn't be there in the office to talk to her. So instead, we had to make special arrangements. For example, like having a long call, and also getting prepared and getting involved to give a very thorough sort of like a discussion to walk over all the details which did not work out, and sort of give her also space and the time to know what our expectations are, and also point her to the right person who we believe will be helpful to improve. For example, if someone who always have issues stay on top of the timeline, then just give a road to have like a more like a close contact to help her with that. So it's definitely difficult, but at the end of the day, things still didn't work out and she had to leave, which I think also that's also one reason why we have been seeing a higher participation rate in our firm. As I mean, I mentioned that I definitely agree, is that for the junior staff who recently started their career, it's just a lot harder for them to navigate the situation and to figure out what would work, what would not work for them. So it takes a lot of patience to mentor them, but also to some point, it's also important to know where the bottom line is. And if the difficult conversation has to happen or some difficult action needs to be taken, then it's definitely not the situation everybody would have liked, but this is what it is, I guess.
Well, thank
Sorry,
you so
it's
much.
not very helpful.
No, thank you so much. Very helpful. And I see people are leaving the event, so perhaps it's time to call it a meeting. And thank both of you. It's been really inspiring and wonderful conversation, wonderful contributions. I would like just to let you know about our next event, which we have a networking event on Friday, October 15th, same time as tonight at 8 p.m. So if you are on our mailing list, you will receive the information. And then our next webinar will be Thursday, October 21st, always 8 p.m. about everything I would have loved to know before I started my career. And we will have an encore featuring again Ami in his capacity of our main informant about work, and Nuno Teles, who's president of Diageo Beer North American Inc. And we'll have an amazing combination again about this.
You see, Andrea, this is amazing. You're going to have somebody speaking who runs a huge beer company. And if this was not during COVID, we could meet and he could give beer to everyone. And now, how does he give us beer on Zoom? This is
we will have to ask him to ship.
Tragedy. He can't give us beer, right? So here we are.
Wonderful. So bring your own beer if you drink beer or your liquid of choice.
Thanks so much for organizing this, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much
Thank you
you as
all.
well.